It's been called a tipping point in the conflict between science and religion, the great debate that happened here in Oxford in 1860. In this debate, everyone knows that Thomas Huxley won a great victory for science over religion championed by Samuel Wilberforce. But what everyone knows is wrong. What really happened? There was no official record of the event made at the time, and the next day the local paper barely mentioned it. But we do know that it wasn't a debate at all. The pattern for these events was that someone presented a paper, and then people responded to the paper. In this case, the paper was presented by John William Draper, someone we'll meet again later. Draper's talk went on far too long, and everyone was bored by it. Samuel Wilberforce got up to respond, and at the time Wilberforce was one of the most popular public speakers in Britain.
Now, there is no direct writing about what was said at that debate, but what the reporter at Jackson's Oxford Journal tells us is this: the bishop attacked Mr. Darwin's theory for not being philosophical. In other words, the way they use philosophical, we'd call it scientific. Because he said Mr. Darwin had provided no experimental evidence to show of any creature turning into another creature. Now, this is what he seems to have said. There is no mention of the Bible or of thumping or banging on about Genesis or anything like that. He is attacking the theory of the origin of species on utterly scientific grounds. Wilberforce had not taken the origin of species and gone berserk. He'd combed it carefully with a highly analytical mind. And he used that in his debate. We know in detail what Wilberforce thought about the origin of species, because only about a month later, he published a major review in one of the great learned magazines of the day. It was more than a modern review. It was 40 pages long. That was a whole semi-book in its own right. And what he says is this: he goes through every one of Darwin's points, point by point, biologically and in everything. And then towards the end, he comes out with something. Under no circumstances should you ever evaluate a scientific theory on theological grounds. You should never use revelation, the Bible, as a guide to your science. You have to take nature as nature says, because God has made everything, yes, no question about that. But God has let us work out the details first. That's what science is all about. Now, this is a position which anybody would call enlightened, informed, and sophisticated, soapy, as the Victorians would have caused it.
So what about Wilberforce's question about Huxley's ancestors?
We are told that when Wilberforce was in full flow in this discussion, Wilberforce knew that he had an audience that was half asleep after Draper. Wilberforce, the brilliant orator, the wit, the ecclesiastical wag, wanted to wake him up. Displays of wit, oratory, and apparently he had within minutes them sat on the edge of their seats listening to him. And a lot of orators can do this. He perhaps got slightly carried away and points to Huxley, who was sitting on the front row or near the front row, and allegedly said this. We don't quite know what he said, because it was said by different versions by different people. Mr. Huxley, or Professor Huxley, is it from your grandmother or your grandfather's side that you claim a descent with the apes? Allegedly at this point, Huxley stands up and responds and says, I would rather be descended from a simple monkey than be descended from a meddlesome bishop. Allegedly, uproar, ladies faint, the world's going mad. That's the official story.
Wilberforce wasn't an ignorant churchman. He didn't quote the Bible. He attacked Darwin's theory on scientific grounds, not religious grounds. And then he poked fun at Huxley personally. What happened next? How did Huxley respond? More next time.